Breaking news. The Black Plague has become one of the most deadly diseases in history. This growing disease isn't the end of the world, but it is the end of many lives. You see, in 1346, the Bubonic Plague broke out in full force in China and Central Asia. Today, after 6 months have elapsed, the Bubonic Plague has spread from a trading post into Europe. The plague grew and reached Sicily and Spain, spanning the entire population of the world at the time. Although the disease was spreading rapidly, it was not from person to person, but through animals. Animals had the disease and spread it through biting. Fleas and cats were the most common animal that carried the disease. The disease started killing millions at a rapid pace, and it currently has the potential to wipe out the entire human population. People could not execute their daily task as people with the plague had chills, headaches, and commonly coughed up blood. How will the political standpoint hold up with many people in very high positions not being able to execute their job? Let's send it over to Troy to resolve this problem.
Thank you, Ryan. Like you mentioned, the political state of Europe had a drastic change because of this lethal plague. Unfortunately, it was definitely a negative change. Politicians were just as vulnerable as regular citizens. Queen Eleanor of Aragon, King Alfonso VI of Castile, and many more all fell. Priests, nuns, and monks were all left to care for the ill, so as you can imagine, they got infected as well. The Papal Court of Aragon were just one of many to lose 3/4 of their members. This led to a shortage of religious leaders, resulting in mixed beliefs. In some places, religious services simply stopped. In others, they believed it was God's wrath. Others were so lost they even used innocent Jewish people as scapegoats. To solve the pandemonium, Pope Clemente V gave people who fell to the illness forgiveness for their sins and a chance to achieve salvation to help them accept their fate. Of course, it didn't save any lives, but it was all that could be done. Unfortunately, doctors also face hardship. Ryan, introduce the audience to Edward.
Thank you, Troy. Here we have Edward Sullivan. Hello, Edward.
Hi.
What does a typical week in your current situation look like?
Man, it's been tough for me. And my family has been trying to hide our faces from the public as much as possible. But it's harder said than done. I am dealing with some sick parents.
Very interesting. Troy mentioned a little bit before, but how are your relationships being affected?
Well, working in the medical department during this time exposes you to various germs and bacteria. As you know, my beloved wife and kids mean the world to me, so I try to not be exposed to them whenever I can. Growing distant to them and not sharing the memories that we once did.
Edward, we have one more question for you. How is the rest of your company being affected?
Like me and the rest of my company has been losing loved ones, and many job opportunities have arose as many people in our company have died from this disease. It's been rough.
Thank you, Edward. Now the outbreak damaged Europe on a political aspect, but how did this affect the economy? Right over to JP for his thoughts.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. As I said before, we'll be looking at the economic impact of the Black Plague. I'm doing economics! As you said, my mom's dying because she has the Black Plague. Anyways, the Black Plague has a major economic impact across Europe, causing farms and villages to collapse as workers died as well. Over 1,300 villages vanished, and 2/3 of farms in Thurington fell. In agriculture, the economy declined rapidly as poor farm workers got sick. Wages dropped from 12 to 20% just to 8%. Even though the labor was scarce, some peasants gained freedom from labor services, fixed leases, and more disposable income, while lords were stuck with fixed incomes. Trade slowed as the plague-free religions avoided infected areas, and good prices fell sharply. Livestock, especially sheep, became more important to markets, though animals could get the plague. Despite the devastation, new job opportunities opened up in major trading companies like the Bonsagari and the Bonsporsi rose in power.
Wow, very interesting. Now that we've gained a very solid sense of the economic and political point of views on how the plague affected them, let's see how the plague affected individual people's relationships and their social standpoints. Let's send it over to Troy again to find out.
Well, just like everything else that came in contact with the plague, it was decimated. Like earlier mentioned with Edward, maintaining relationships became difficult, specifically in more crowded places like London and Bristol, which became breeding grounds for rats that transmit the diseases. Only people in open country had a chance. Inside of these cities, there were many overcrowded buildings and houses that were central locations for the disease to spread. People and relationships were separated, and communication was difficult. As you can imagine, peasants were especially struggling. Because of this, they demanded better working conditions, causing such peasants to merge and become less orderly. The government obviously wasn't liking this, so they put a maximum wage to control it. This only led to revolt many years later, but the plague actually benefited women. This is because many employed men perished, leaving opportunity for lower class women to fill their men's roles. This helped them gain independence and land and some control, and happiness, and this was leaving lasting effects.
Around 3 years later, in the early 1350s, the plague started to die down. Leaders forced travelers and sailors to go through isolation periods that would last 40 days to prove they were not sick. When proven they were not sick, they were allowed into the empire and civilizations. Civilizations and empires started making sanitation extremely important to everyone, requiring everyone to take part seriously in sanitation. This did tremendously help ending the plague 3 years later. But although this method works, it was after the plague had wiped out half of the human population, killing 50 million people.